ask that you're supreme. You are great to the wherever you've been. Your vision is better than anything you've seen. Standing where many have suffered and been grieved. Woman, don't bow down. Don't let them silence you.
Dumelang, re a lamogela gape mo It's a Feminist Thing. Today's conversation is about rape and rape culture. Right up front, I would like to give a trigger warning. We're not here to re-traumatize, but to have an honest and frank conversation about where we are as a society and to speak on a way forward. I'm joined, of course, by my cohorts, Fina Korisang, Tando Kumete, and Niko Shikwambane. How y'all doing?
Yeah.
In 2019-2020, the police recorded an average of 116 rapes each day. 116. And this is reported cases. There are many more women who do not report. So this number is a drop in the ocean of yet another crisis we are faced with in this country and possibly in the world. Part of the problem is that we as a society do not grasp the concept of consent. As a result, we are raising children who do not understand or respect it. Our roving reporter, Nsako Mhlanga, sat down with a group of young men to discuss consent and rape culture. Here's what they had to say.
We understand kanjani consent?
If ukuthi uzoba ne-consent, uzobonisa ukuthi nenhlonipho for lento eyenzayo and uhloniphe lo muntu omcelayo namanje.
But like practically asking permission to touch them or like to do something to them.
So siyazi ukuthi consent is giving a yes or a no. So do you think a yes can be a no and a no can be a yes?
Like ufuna ubamba intombazana. Like sometimes when ukuthi amabo yabona like ama-actions akayasho ukuthi ungathi.
What do you do in that situation?
Obvious umfana uzothita because uyambo ukuthi like u-interested ukuthi umthita and now ufuna ukumthita so uzovela umthita. Also it goes back ukuthi how we were raised. A no should be a no. It's not rejection, but it is what it is.
Into engikhule ngayo baba bekashaya umama yabona ngathi izinto lezi ingena kimi kakhulu esikoleni nasekhaya ngathi ingena kimi kakhulu.
We don't talk with the dead, but we see it, we visualize it, and then internalize it.
Have you guys ever heard of date rape, drugs, and how that contributes to rape?
Thina ngoba like starting sethu la like ama-drugs like ama-drugs everywhere. Intombazane esiphuzweni bamthelele izinto. After lapho simangala, hawu intombazane wayalele mfethu wenzani? Yabona? Mamubuza ulele lo mntana kanti hayi sekaceda kumkhulula izinto ezinjalo. Plus izotrend social media, izinto ziyagcwala social media. Uzocabanga ukuzibulala izinto.
So like amantombazane kumele accept ukuthi asinama angcono sihlale emakhaya or akwazi ukuzithengela ama-drinks. Umuntu maka ufaka i-drink ngcono amthengele sealed than ukuthi amthengele letheli ngoba angeke azi ukuthi inaphakathi.
Manje abafana abaningi babheka ukuthi vele nami bazothenga ama-drugs ayibhema isitombazane nayo kuzomele imbhadale ngasamtini.
Ama-bash maybe endaweni ohlala kuzo awayenzakali. Thina le kazi ayenzakala ngobuningi. And ama-chair ahlezi akhona vele abamba ibhantshi ema-outhini ukuthi maybe mangabe ngimthengele ibhuzi i-answer yakhe yini ukuthi uzolala nami.
And how do you think, Nina, as young men, you're going to help women in this fight of gender-based violence, rape, and men who don't ask for your consent?
Thina singakwazi ukubagayira amantombazane ukuthi nabo banganaki attention, like bangafuni attention. The way ukuthi by-avoid it, the way bagcoka nakhona nabantu ababa-approachayo. Because like again makaphuma agcoka isiketi esimfishane, all eyes are on her.
Ngeke sihlale singakubheki uma ugcoke ingubo encane. Sivele nawe ufuna sikubheke. Mozosigcokela nje isiketi esihamba la ethangeni esincane.
Are you saying ukuthi bona they are asking to be raped? because bagqoke izinto ezifishane.
Thina masokubona ugqoke iy'keti ezincane sivele sibone kahle ukuthi umuntu ongenamuntu. Mina ngikhulele emakhaya kahle kahle. Emakhaya nje umuntu onomuntu angeke ubone agqoke isiketi esincane ovala amadolo.
How do we change the way amadoda bacabanga ngakhona?
Ngoba lento lesi ngakhona ukuyistobheza abantu abona mara igcina vele kusasa kwakhona sisilethela ama-enemy. Abantu sebashilo ukuthi wena ubani wazini kakhulu ungazenzi ngcono izinto ezinje.
Kusakhona bobaba babelieve ukuthi umfana kumele ube ne-power of umfazi wakhe yabo. Mara into esingayazama ukuthi sisapothe abafazi kule nto ababhekane nayo and sikwazi ukufundisa nabobhibhithi abancane ukuthi into ezikanje kumele uzi-atheke kanjani.
Nakhona masithi like amadoda change, nakhona like amaphoyisa. Yabona, like amaphoyisa ngathi awayithathi serious umsebenzi wabo. Yabona, into abayithatha serious ukuthi bathola ama-bribe. And every time masibabona endabeni bakhuluma nge-justice, crime. So ibamba crime, so zibamba zonke le. But reality, nothing happens. It's still the same. Social media, one every day, different cases, different women. Nabantwana abancane. So lento lezo isikhulu.
Kutlwile dilo tse ntsi tse le hore di problematic, right? Dress code, being socialized in a way that makes you mistreat women.
Yeah.
Alcohol, substance abuse. There's a lot of issues.
There was what I liked about that, in as much as it's disturbing, is the honesty. This is the reflections of how young men and older men, quite frankly, view women and the issues of consent. And you could hear partly the understanding that they've been taught what consent is and the importance thereof. But their general belief system is that if you're wearing a short skirt, you're asking for it. That girls sometimes say no when they actually mean yes. And that is the general belief that young men have.
I think for me, my outrage comes on the clothing part as well, where they say, "Hore, kamukho ngwanyana aparang." Like, it shows you whether or not there is a presence of another man in her life or not.
Right.
And and she's making herself available. Because if there was someone in her life,
she wouldn't wear like that.
You know what? So for me, what really stood out is the fact that conceptually, they don't understand what consent is. And that their communities and where they've been brought up has really shaped their idea of the understanding or the lack thereof of consent. And so what happens is that when they are faced with a difficult decision to make, as one of the boys had mentioned, do I touch, don't I touch, I'll touch anyway. When they are faced with a situation where they have to confront making a decision and acting, even without consent, they used their problematic lived experiences shaped by those very communities to make a decision.
Without a doubt.
As a result of that, what they do is non-consensual behavior and ultimately or potentially is rapey behavior.
And there's a lot of mind reading.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think men understand what consent is.
But those were boys.
And boys understand what consent is.
No, they don't, Nico.
I can still stand by that point because it's never about the feelings and the position of the subject. It's about the culture among themselves as men.
Which came out strongly in what they were saying.
If they cared about the subject, it's like if I make you tea, Tando, if I offer to make you tea and you say no, I'm not going to force tea in your throat.
I hear you.
If you say yes to tea and you fall asleep while drinking tea, I'm not going to continue to pour tea down your
Nico,
throat
do you
because
understand?
there is no consent. I think that men are only interested in upholding cultures and norms that they agree to as peers among themselves.
Nico,
Well, they are interested in engaging what the subject is feeling at that
boys
moment.
are groomed to be oblivious about everything you just said now. That's part of the machinery.
So are you saying they don't know
They've been
what they're
groomed
doing?
to be ignorant. They've been groomed to be ignorant of the things that enable them to respectfully engage with other human beings. And there's a distinction in how we are raised and how we are groomed. Boys are not raised to be rapists. There's something that happens in between where they are groomed. There is a machinery.
My worry is that 65% of these young men are raised by women alone. If you were to say to them, if your mother is wearing a short skirt, if your sister is wearing a short skirt, does this mean she's
Did you hear one of them?
The reaction is different.
Did you hear? And I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it. He says, you visualize it, you internalize it when you see your father abusing your mother.
Exactly.
Right? So it's observed behavior and it's learned from observing.
You're not just raised by your mother, you're also raised by your whole community. The things that you see when you leave your gate, the things that happen at school, by the shops, everywhere.
I refuse to separate one's own individual consciousness from all of this.
These are boys.
No. I think you know when you're doing wrong.
Exactly.
Though.
Wrong is
What's
wrong.
wrong?
Wrong
But
is wrong is
also,
wrong.
Can I tell you what's frustrating me? African women are not allowed or taught to say yes to sex.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So we're talking about boys, but when it comes to girls, do we tell girls when is the right time to say yes?
Yes.
Because we are treated as if how yes urata sexy ibile o le tekati. All right? Whereas we should be encouraging yes, so that it's a clear distinction. Would you like to have sex or no? And the girl is able to say yes, please.
She wants.
Yes. Whoa.
I know.
And I'm glad we disagree.
Yeah.
Also, because these issues are complex, and I'm sure the people watching at home also have very conflicting, different
Let's hear
opinions.
what Bonto has to say, because I think one way we can understand some of these issues and how they make us feel is through expressing them ka language e we tlhaloganyang.
A way of reclaiming one's power ke gore re kgone go bitsa dilo ka maina a tsona ka loleme lwa rona. Dumela Bontsho Pilane.
Le ga khomotso
Nya re teng ma re bua ka eng ka jeno.
re bua ka rape culture ka jeko ntse re bua ka rape culture in the ways that boys are taught to not ask for consent ga re lebella lefoko le ka Setswana kapa re tlhalosa gore rape culture ke eng ka Setswana ke mekgwa e setšhaba rona setšhaba se nolofatsang kgonagalo ya petelelo le kgokgontso e emanang le thobalano. And in short, we're talking about this is the ways in which us as society enable an environment where rape and sexual violence can happen.
Ile gore rape yona ke eng ke go beta ke.
Ke go beta petelelo ke yone rape ka Setswana. Yaanong go etsa rape culture when you create an enabling environment for rape to happen. Ke ga o etsa ge setšhaba rona ka batho re etsa gore go nne bonolo gore motho a kgone go betella motho o mongwe kapa a kgone go kgontsa motho ka dilo tse di amanang le thobalano.
Thando nganyakiti.
Yeah.
Awizami ngesizulu ke.
Well, rape in isiZulu, we say ukudlwengula. Now that we're speaking about, isiZulu and rape culture and the enablement, and of course this is my own personal opinion, but I think that one of the places where we enable, rape culture in our intimate spaces is where we have virginity testing and we kind of take control of the genitalia of girls, and we say that when you are not allowed to do this with your genitalia until XYZ. All of these things, while I respect, my culture, I'm a staunch Zulu, I love my culture, but I have to call out when we're doing things that enable rape culture.
Bontsho Pilane, thank you very much for joining us again today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Khomotso.
We're going to have a more in-depth conversation about rape culture later.
Share with us what rape culture is in your home language on all our social media platforms. After the break, Rebelagas Judiciary Rape. Stay with us.
Don't let that silence rule.
Welcome back to It's a Feminist Thing. Namhlanje sikhuluma nge-rape ne-rape culture. Our next guest is Professor Divya Bana, who is the South African Research Chair in Gender and Childhood Sexuality at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She joins us here today to discuss statutory rape.
Let me welcome you, Prof, and thank you so much for joining this conversation with us today. One of the issues that are a big deal in South Africa, and we really dilly-dally around, is the issue of statutory rape. So maybe, if I may ask, what is the age of consent in South Africa?
According to the Criminal Law and Sexual Offences Act, the age of consent is 16 years of age.
Professor, given the fact that the age of consent in South Africa is, in fact, 16, why do you think that some people believe that teenagers who are still effectively children can seduce adult men?
Any kind of sexual relationship between a child and an adult is is wrong and is a case of sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Having said that, there are far more complex issues that we need to consider when we understand what motivates children to engage in sexual relations against the law and with men or women older than themselves. And I think we have to look at the climate in our country in relation to poverty, in relation to transactional sexual relations, in relation to the quest and the desire for materiality. By that I mean what motivates young girls to engage, for instance, in relationships with much older men. And this is a highly exploitative relationship, as we have seen wide publicity against these sugar daddy relationships or blessers and blessies.
In 2006, the South African Human Rights Commission noted that sexual violence, including abuse perpetrated by educators, was one of the most prevalent forms of violence in its hearings on violence in schools. So do you think attitudes around statutory rape are making young girls more vulnerable to sexual violence at schools?
I think that this issue around schoolgirls becoming victims of adult male teachers is a real pandemic in this country. The issue then again is power relationships, as well as the way in which women's bodies, girls' bodies, are objectified. Girls are seen as routes to fulfill sexual desires. And I think that far more research needs to be conducted in schools in order to understand what is going on, in order to increase possibilities of reporting, and to ensure that such perpetrators are brought to book.
Prof, what are your thoughts on families that believe that statutory rape is a family matter and that it should be resolved privately?
One important revolution in terms of ending sexual violence against women and girls is for families to take a stand and to ensure that such acts of violence are indeed reported and that they are no longer the domain of secrecy, because it is the secrecy that has destroyed families, that has destroyed lives, and that has allowed the perpetuation of girls' vulnerability in families that are expected to protect them. In fact, families are also no longer safe spaces, precisely because of the secrecy. And often it is the women and the girls who are blamed for engaging in these relations. The women and girls are seen as influencing the sexuality of adult males.
Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your wealth of knowledge, Prof. Bana. You know, it's quite interesting that she speaks about how young women are blamed for the attitudes of men or the behavior of men.
And of much older men, to actually be even more specific about it.
I mean, how can you all hold young girls accountable for the urges of adult men?
Statutory rape is a form of sexual violence, and we need to start treating it as such. There should never be a situation where we behave as though a sexual and romantic relationship between a minor and an adult is normal. Nico is essentially what we're trying to say. But up next, we're going to be unpacking rape culture. Don't go away.
Don't let them silence you.
Rape culture is dangerous because it provides the necessary context for rape to occur. The number of rape cases reported to the police in comparison to the number of cases that actually go to trial and result in a conviction gives us a tangible example of the dire consequences of rape culture in our legal system.
The numbers aren't great. Let's take a look. The 2017 report, Rape, Justice in South Africa, a retrospective study of the investigation, prosecution, and adjudication of reported cases from 2012, also known as the RAPSA, found that of the 3,952 cases included in the study, only 65% were referred for prosecution. However, prosecutors only accepted 34.4% of these for trial.
It gets worse. Only 8.6% of the original 3,952 cases were finalized with a verdict of guilty of a sexual offense.
Meaning only 340 of the 4,000 cases got a guilty verdict.
So why would a victim in South Africa have confidence in the legal system when only 8% of cases that are reported end up with a guilty verdict?
It's why a lot of women don't report rape, guys. I didn't. I don't know if I would moving forward in the future. 8% for a couple of years of your life, where you're going to be living, breathing, and having all this toxic energy around you. But it's also important for the cases, for that 8% that are successful. So I don't know what I would say. It's really an individual decision. I didn't, and I don't think I would.
And I think that's why women have started to explore alternative forms of justice, you know? Because perhaps our legal system is just not the way to go.
You know, and you also have to look at what the support system was for the women who were victimized, right? You find that a lot of people don't have people to assist them to take them to the police station, don't understand the steps. They don't even understand what the expectations are once they enter into the justice ecosystem. They don't know what it is they're supposed to be expecting. I've had women come to me and say to me that there are cases that they reported, you know, months ago or a year ago that still hasn't been dealt with.
And just because you report it doesn't mean that the prosecutor will want to take it to trial. That's something else as well, you know, because they may feel that the case is too weak, even if you feel that you deserve justice and you want to go through the trial.
I mean, even in the inside we saw, the boys were mentioning how the police are not doing their job.
Of course.
I mean, it's so clear to everybody that there's someone who's failing everybody. The system is failing all of us.
And I mean, gathering evidence for a rape case must be quite difficult, right? If you don't have the opportunity to go to the hospital or the police station to go get a rape kit, or if you only decide that you want to lay charges 30 days after your rape incident, how do you collate that evidence?
That's part of why I'm really looking forward to talking to our elder today about this particular issue.
Up next, our conversation with our elder, Delphine Sirumaga.
Delphine Sirumaga, African women's rights activist and UN Women Country Representative in Zimbabwe, joins us now to discuss rape culture and the different ways that we see it manifest in every part of our societies, including our courts.
Welcome to the show, Ma'am Delphine.
Thank you for inviting me to the show.
Ma'am Delphine, I'll never forget Fezeka Kuzwayo's rape case against Jacob Zuma, where Judge Willem van der Merwe reached the conclusion that Fezeka was not rapeable because she is a strong person, well in control of herself, knowing what she wants. That after he continuously mentioned her weight in the judgment in order to make the point that she was big enough to fight off her rapist. How do you think rape culture influenced how believable Fezeka was as a victim?
I mean, one of the things we tend to forget is that, in fact, the people who are judges, the people who are policemen, who are policewomen, or the people within the court system, for example, are also people who are socialized out there in communities. So it isn't that as soon as you become a judge, then you're enlightened in a particular way. You come from a society that is actually making these decisions and has these beliefs amongst themselves. So it's really very embedded in institutional life and institutional ways. So we really have to really unpack quite a bit of what is going on in institutions, including the mental state of people. I mean, can someone define to us what not rapeable is?
Can you remember listening to what the judge was saying, what you were feeling? Now that you've had time to reflect on it, what does it say about us?
To be honest with you, as the judgment was being read, and I believe it took half a day to read the judgment, you go numb at a certain point. What we also don't realize is that in the case as well, we actually had to get police protection in the courtroom because people were more angry with us or angry with the people who were supporting the system, who were supporting Fezeka at the time. It was a very difficult case. I remember very clearly even having to leave the country the day after the judgment was made, because the trauma does not just live within the court. The trauma goes throughout society for a very long time after that. I will never forget the case. I do remember that we felt that we had done the right thing. We knew that society was talking about the issue. We knew that we had created a big sense of debate that went out there and brought the issue to people's mouths at their dining tables in their bedrooms. And I hope that people don't forget. I hope people really take it for what it was, but also recognizing that the institutions can rape people as well. It's not just individuals who are doing so.
Ma'am Delphine, do you think that sexual offense courts are able to subvert rape culture in order to actually deliver justice to victims?
What you need to understand is that court systems are run by human beings. So it's really, at the end of the day, are these human beings able to do the work, rather than having an institution that has the perfect structures, the perfect policies, and the perfect setup in order for this to happen. We have to really start looking at who are these individuals, everywhere from the clerk in the court who's registering this case, to the person who's, processing the paperwork, and also to the judge, right up until the judge. So it's really, can we get human beings to do the right thing, rather than talk about a court as an institution or a structure that is set up to do the work? Are the individuals within those structures able to do the work is the big question.
Institutions of higher learning often treat rape as if it's a civil matter that they can mediate. How does this perpetuate rape culture?
Well, clearly, people are taking it into their own hands, thinking that it's a matter that you can do away with, as though someone just insulted someone, next door, and therefore me, who doesn't necessarily have a legal background or a social work background or any particular background to deal with rape, I am able then, therefore, to make a judgment on something that has to do with a person's human rights. It's the same thing in traditional settings where you have reparations made. We'll give you a cow, we'll give you a goat. That sort of arrangement that happens there. It comes down to people taking it as, okay, sorry, somebody did something bad to you, but it's not that great a deal, such a big deal that we can actually just speak it away. What people don't understand is that a human being's body has been violated, and that trauma lives with a person, not only physically, but mentally for a very long time. So when they start deciding that they're going to mediate, they're really denying the person's physical being and their emotional being to heal. They're just saying, we want peace, but we're going to get peace in a manner that suits all of us, rather than that suits you as the victim and what the victim needs. People need to put the victim at the center of the issue.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation, Aunt Delphine, and for sharing your time with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Up next, we're going to be unpacking rape in intimate partnerships, such as marriage.
Welcome back to It's a Feminist Thing. Still forward, fearless, and unapologetically feminist. Rape and sexual assault in an intimate romantic relationship, such as marriage, is a form of sexual violence that we rarely discuss, and yet it's estimated at 14 to 25% of women who experience forced sex at least once during their marriages. What pushes perpetrators to hurt those closest to them in this way? There is no better person to discuss this with us than our resident ally, Professor Kopano Ratele. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Professor, when it comes to marital rape, I think we have to discuss some of the harmful and problematic patriarchal ideas about ilobola. For instance, you pay for your wife, so to speak, and so then men believe then that they're entitled to their wives' bodies, And, I'm not sure if you remember this, or you've ever been in a situation where you've heard a song, the Zulu wedding, and some people even stand up and say that you must give him that thing whenever he wants it, So we see these kinds of toxic and problematic wedding celebrations. So would you agree that this kind of custom encourages marital rape?
I have no doubt. As a matter of fact, I have been at a wedding in KZN some years ago, where the patriarchy was just alive and kicking right there among the people. I mean, this idea that when you get married or you are in the relationship, so the 1 yes that you say that we're together gives you permission as a man. Whenever you want sex, that's it. She can't say no. How could you think so? That you have had a yes once, and that means yes forever, that nobody can say. So entitlement is deeply, deeply tied in with patriarchy, that I'm entitled to your body and you can't say no. And of course, what you mentioned is it's supported by religion, family, schools, culture, you name it.
Most people believe rape to be when it's by a stranger. You know, when you're assaulted by a stranger, for them it's rape. But when it's in an intimate relationship, it's sort of seen differently, you know? So in what ways is it different when it's in an intimate relationship than when it's perpetrated by a stranger?
The first thing is our society, and many societies around the world, by the way. But we shouldn't be saying this is just a South African thing. So women are encouraged to want to be married, right? They encourage that to be in a relationship is good. Problem here is, of course, that singlehood, being alone, is confused and is stigmatized. So women are encouraged right from an early age, at get-go, that you have to be in a relationship, right? That's the first thing. So when you're in a relationship and other people are not in a relationship, you think you're better off. That even though you might be sexually abused, raped, and having sex when you don't want to have sex, because of the stigma around singlehood, you stay in a relationship that's not really good for you. And that's one problem. I've also thought about this for middle-class women. You see, when you're middle class and you're receiving goods, maybe you're living in a good house, you have a good car, somehow the stakes are even higher for you, right? Because you say, everybody looks at your husband, or you are married to a priest, you're married to a businessman. He says, such a nice man. But they don't know what happens back in the house, that this person is a bully, dominates you. And so you are caught up in two things. You are married, but also because you have all these accoutrements, meaning the goods that comes with the middle class life, that you're getting in a car, but there's a real pain and you can't seem to get out. And that's the problem sometimes we have in this country. We think that the problem of sexual violence in a relationship or with strangers happens outside, or with those people who are a lower class, poor, somewhere in Diepsloot. But the truth is it happens everywhere.
Yeah. Professor, you said something earlier which I totally agree with, around grooming of women for marriage. And I know that in churches mostly, we train them from a young age how to be a wife, how to be and want this marriage, to the point where your first mojolo, you are already getting married. Just in jail. First guy who says, I want you, ke monna, ke husband, ho fella mo. How do we turn these kind of things around?
Oh, we start right at the beginning. I mean, I've heard a young, wonderful, very confident young woman. I was talking to her a few months back. I will not mention her name. But one of the things that struck me is something I hear from young women. When you're talking to them, they say, I want to have a husband who's educated, whose husband. I said, I was really aghast at that moment. That, look, this young woman is confident, but she thinks that getting married is a goal in life, rather than saying, I'm going to get to university, I'm going to do things for myself. So right from an early age, we need this education. It's an education that makes young women independent, to be feminist, to be cool, to be all kinds, to be unruly, as a matter of fact. Unruly means this, that you shouldn't be one to be ruled by men. One last example is this thing, that constantly young women, and girls in particular, certainly boys, I know this for men, that they confuse the idea of feminism with hating men. Feminism simply is about equality. That you want equality, you want independence. Okay, all right. You know what? Thank you very much for this question. How would you say, if you are a girl or a young woman, that you love somebody who hurts you? That's the one mirror side of it. Because if you say, this is not blaming women at all, But I'm trying to understand something here about love and violence. How can they be in the same place? So then when we ask men, is your question, men, if you say you love someone, how would you hurt them in that sense? I mean, you hurt them deliberately, you injure them, you enter their body when they don't want it. So there's something really weird in our society. And precisely, there's some psychology to it, but also this because it's not just an individual thing. I mean, if you have 24%, 25% of men who rape and injure women, you start to see that this is a social problem, right? It's a big problem. It's a problem about policies, about our social structure, about our cultures, about how our society is organized. So you have to attack it at 2 points: at the mindset level, the individual level, but you also have to attack the problem at the social level, so that you constantly, repeatedly tell about men something as simple as this, something as simple as, you know that consensual sex is really great sex. I mean, this is as simple as that. Consensual sex is great sex, sex that's wanted because somebody is ready, it's wet, it's wonderful, you are going to have really amazing sex repeatedly. But the young men and men don't get that education.
Professor Pilar tlhoka nako ya ho bua in detail all these things, but re leboga nako ya hao e re fileng yona. Till next time, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Life partners can be rapists. Husbands can be rapists. Boyfriends can be rapists. Being in a romantic and intimate relationship with a person does not automatically mean that you owe them sex or that they are entitled to your body. We all have a constitutionally protected right to bodily integrity. We are keen to hear your thoughts on this issue. Please feel free to share them with us on our social media platforms.
It's a feminist thing. Welcome back and thank you for joining us. I mean, what does restorative justice look like after a rape incident, right? Wouldn't that mean sitting down as a victim with your perpetrator, and having a conversation? Would some people prefer an upright apology from the perpetrator rather than going through the legal justice system?
I think so. I think that would have worked for me in many ways because it was the negation or the erasure of the event that I found so problematic, and the lack of apology. I think I would have appreciated an apology and contrition to show that I did you wrong. I just wanted somebody to say, I did you wrong. Can you just admit it?
Acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it and don't make me feel.
Apology, not I apologize if you think I hurt you. Because you see, those kind of apologies are also there where somebody says, because you say I hurt you, I'm sorry. But it's like they don't acknowledge that what they did actually hurt you.
For me, that's just the first part. I mean, the truth is, if you look at the word, breaking down the word restore, the truth is you can never be restored after that type of violence.
Of course
And
not.
so, an apology, if that's what you want, is probably the first step, in actually moving
One of the
forward.
steps.
But forgiveness is also about self.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? The Buddhists know
when
this.
You forgive, it also helps you to deal with, it centers you and
this
issues. You sort of leave the person with the baggage.
And certainly we're not
Center
suggesting
yourself.
that this is a fix-all for everybody.
No, of course not.
It's just, it could be so different. And some people must
Absolutely
and
not.
absolutely deserve to go to jail.
Yes.
But that might not be the answer for absolutely everybody.
Yeah.
And even if I say I forgive you, it doesn't mean I'm saying I'm not going to take you to jail.
At some
I mean,
point,
it
in
must be
20
clear
years,
that I forgive you for myself.
Yeah.
But you can still go to jail, and you should. Because
Yes.
you've committed a crime.
Yes, definitely.
Because the consequences of the act live long after
Definitely.
the victim, long after the incident.
We saw the attrition rate.
Yeah.
The chances of somebody actually getting convicted for rape are minimal. So sometimes maybe you'll just take an apology. Ere sorry, Joe. Ere sorry.
You know what? Something that really stood out for me in today's conversation was what Umam Delphine actually spoke about. She said that even institutions can rape you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think we got to unpack that. But for me, when she said that, it reminded me of how institutions like university are just so silent on rape culture. How, students, especially male students, can get away with raping a student, going and sitting right next to the person who they victimized during an examination, and nothing happens. In fact, some institutions even protect the people who've committed
exactly.
acts of
And not just in South Africa.
student.
Remember the case of the Stanford boy who got 3 weeks probation.
Yes.
Right? For this man was caught red-handed by other students raping another student, and the judge just felt that, he's got a good future ahead of him.
First time
offender, so we can certainly be raped by the system as well.
Yeah.
And look, I've said this before, and I'm going to say this again. Keep racist, patriarchal judges out of our legal system.
Yeah.
I mean, remember we had the judge who said that black women are raped as a matter of black culture. And look at this judge in the Kwezi matter who said that Kwezi was rapeable. And these are people, unrapeable. Yeah, and these are the type of people who have vocalized their views. How many more judges, how many more attorneys and advocates actually feel that way?
Never mind ones, you know what, you're talking about specifically white ones. There's black women judges out there who are also seriously problematic. There was one in KZN who, after a father raped his daughter, gave him the most lenient sentence, saying that the daughter wasn't damaged forever.
Oh my goodness.
And this was a black woman. So let's be careful of racializing it, because it's really about a mental state and about a sense of, what is the word? It's a consciousness. It's a particular consciousness. So it's not about a particular type of person who's sitting there, more than it is about the way they have been conditioned and how they think and how they interpret the law.
But victims need more support.
They do.
Not just from the feminist community, from their families, because the moment you speak out, you become so vulnerable in terms of the legal processes that are open to you, in terms of the courts of public opinion. So much scrutiny is directed your way, and you just become a victim.
It is.
And you lose so much of your identity. So we need to support victims.
I can't agree with you more, Nico. I think, and that's why resources that are available are important, and women need to know about them. Your Tutuzela Care Centers, your Namula apps. People, they need to know that these resources are meant for them. We talked about safety pin at some point. We talked about the bot at some point. Hello Rainbow. We need to make these resources available. Women need to know about them. They need to be supported, and we need to believe them. I think for me, what gets to me is when we don't believe women who say, I've been violated.
Conversations about rape and rape culture are never easy, but they are so necessary. If we are serious about interrogating why this is so endemic in our society. Rape is a national crisis. We have to interrogate how we as a nation are complicit in the socialization of young men. We have to ask ourselves, who teaches young men of sexual values? What are they teaching them? Have you had a conversation with your children about consent? Sexual values are taught in the home, on the streets, and even in the classroom. But it's obvious we are failing dismally at the job. We have to do better of teaching our kids how to say yes and no to sex without judging their decisions. None of us are comfortable with discussing sex with our kids, but if you don't, somebody else will. Take a look at what we are discussing next week.
Wat is koolzakken zonder? Als ik probeer om voet te krijgen, dan van voeten aan. Ik geef jou geld.
Dad, it again.
I can't take it anymore.
I'm going to find the police.
I heard there was a complaint. Oh.
That's all from us this evening. Let's meet next week, same time and place, so we can discuss intimate partner violence and domestic violence. take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. Until next time, good night.